As we've gone through our study, we've seen how the Beatitudes are grouped into 8 and then 1. And the 1 Beatitude at the end is actually kind of an expansion of the 8th Beatitude. And it focuses on a very specific topic. So today we look at the Sermon on the Mount and persecution. The final Beatitude is actually an expansion of the 8th Beatitude. So the 8th and 9th Beatitudes tie together very closely. And they're tied together by this theme of persecution. Now the theme of persecution here is not just a persecution that is any persecution. If anyone says anything bad or unjust about you at all. No, it's actually far more specific. And the text says it's a persecution that results from pursuing righteousness. That's the reason. It's a persecution that happens because we pursue righteousness. In fact, it says it again in slightly different language. Jesus says, if anyone should persecute you on account of me. And really, this is just a way of saying the same thing a second time. Jesus parallels the pursuit of righteousness with the pursuit of him. It's something in biblical studies we call a parallelism, saying the same thing for a different way, from a slightly different angle, but you're saying the same thing. So you can be persecuted because of pursuing righteousness, or you can be persecuted because you're pursuing Jesus. It's the same thing in the eyes of this text. And what this text makes clear is that as we move towards flourishing, as we set our hearts towards righteousness and the kingdom of heaven and pursuing Jesus, we will get persecuted. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, yes, that's obvious. Can you explain why? Interestingly, the text really doesn't spend much time explaining why. The text simply tells us that as we pursue righteousness, there will be people who persecute you. It's a natural reaction. Why is not dealt with here. It simply points out the reality that when you pursue flourishing, when you pursue righteousness, persecution is something that will happen. And it probably shouldn't surprise us that persecution is going to happen for several reasons. First of all, flourishing is not easy. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, and we wouldn't need Jesus to come and show us how to flourish. Also, the reality is that we live in a fallen world. We live in a world of sin. And when we pursue good, there is going to be sin in the world that tries to stop us pursuing good, pursuing God, pursuing flourishing, because that is the complete antithesis, the complete opposite of what sin is. Persecution was also a reality for Matthew's audience. And so for them, reading these words in his gospel, that fact would simply be accepted. Whereas me and you might sit there and academically go, well, why would the pursuit of flourishing result in persecution? For Matthew's audience, it was simply an experience, a reality, and they knew it. They didn't need to ask why. They simply saw that when they pursued these things, when they pursued Jesus, when they pursued flourishing, they were persecuted. But whilst the text simply accepts persecution, Matthew has something really important to say in the midst of it. And he reminds his readers that there is a great reward coming. He turns their eyes towards what we call the telos, the end of the story. He turns to the end of the book and shows them what the great working out of that salvation history we've been mentioning is. And he says, you will get this great and glorious reward. So yes, there may be persecution, but don't take your eyes off the prize. And he roots the entire text even more in the salvation history of Israel, as he cites the prophets of the great forerunners of this. He sees the prophets as people who pursued righteousness, who pursued flourishing in God, and yet were persecuted. And he says, just as they have their reward in heaven, so do you. So keep your eyes set on that prize. The glorious telos, the end. Where teleos, wholeness. Where dikaiosune, righteous. Where makarios, flourishing. Where the kingdom of God, all are found in their fullness. Short Matthew says the persecution we face for pursuing flourishing is real. But so is the end goal of it all. In short, rejoice, even though you are persecuted.